once again, thank you for being here, friends. Today, it's a very special Zoom call. We have our friends from the Arlington County Police Department. We want to thank them for being here. If I have not had the pleasure to meet you, my name is Furtado-Gilliam, and I am Director of Discipleship at Clarendon United Methodist Church. Today, I have a co-host, and that will be Lauren Smith.
Hi.
Yay. She is our youth rep for Church Council, and she will be collecting your questions. So if you have any questions that you'd like for us to ask, please just leave them on the chat, and Lauren will collect them, and she will be asking those questions. Okay. So thank you also to Callaway United Methodist Church, our friend, sister church, for being here. So friends, the reason for this conversation is that our church has decided to take a stand and be a part of the solution. We want to be proactive, and we want to be a part of bringing about social equality for all people. So in that spirit of knowing more, in that spirit of wanting to engage in this issue, not only by ourselves, but with our community, we decided to have this conversation and invite friends from the police department to be here. So Captain Linder, would you please start by telling us your name, your title, and why did you become a police officer, and what does that mean to you? And please, all of the officers who are here with us tonight, I will invite you to do the same. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, your name, your title, and why did you decide to be an officer?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting us. And Reverend Davis, happy birthday. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. So I'm glad you're here on your birthday. I'm Captain Scott Linder. I recently promoted about a month and a half ago. Prior to this position, I was the lieutenant of the homicide robbery unit. I've been here for 25 years, I think, now. The gentleman in the back will introduce himself. He was in the same academy with me. We have four officers here that have been here quite a while, and then a little bit younger one, which probably has a better perspective than we do, because he's brand new. He's part of our ambassador program, which helps with hiring and recruiting officers. So I went to George Washington University, which was right across the river. And when I was in high school, my basketball coach was a police officer. And so he was a school resource officer, and he was kind of a mentor to me. And I just liked what he believed in and how he acted and who he was. And another mentor of mine was the chief of police from the town I was from. And it just seemed like a natural thing for me to do. I interned in Arlington County back a long time ago in the 90s. I really enjoyed the city atmosphere and the area of Arlington, and I made that ultimate decision to be here. I originally wanted to go into federal law enforcement, FBI or something like that. However, I enjoyed the community so much and the county so much that I just decided to stay, and the rest is history. I'm here now, and it's been 25 years. So I'll let Lieutenant Coco introduce himself.
Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm Lieutenant Alicio Coco, and I have been with the department for my 23rd year, will be in December. I'm originally from here, born from family from Guatemala, came here when I was 4.5, and lived in the district for a minute, and then came here, graduated from Wakefield High School, 1988, and went in the Marines for about 7 years, came back, finished college at George Mason University, and joined the department in 1997. I wish I had something inspirational as to why I want to be an officer, but to be honest with you, I like the prospect of just being a community helper. I have coached soccer forever. I coached boys, girls, travel, high school, And I've always enjoyed giving back to the community. And this agency, as Cotton Linder said, it's just always been to me highly regarded as a citizen growing up here, as a Latino. I think I wanted to give back to the Hispanic community. And among my assignments, I've worked in all the patrol sections, have been a midnight watch commander, worked in our special victims unit as a lieutenant for that unit. And I think these are very interesting times, challenging times, but also there are opportunities here. So thank you for having me.
Hey, my name is Tom Rakowski. I've been here for 25 years. I'm a sergeant on the outreach team. I'm originally from Philly, but I moved here when I was a kid in Arlington. And I went to O'Connell High, and then I went to UVA. And I'm a sergeant on the community outreach team. So we're out here trying to be part of the community. And that's why I became a police officer, because it truly is, in my opinion, and when I started, it truly is a selfless way to be a public servant in many ways. And I always felt that, I've been blessed, and it's nice to be a servant to others. And this was what I thought for me was a good way to do that.
I'm Lieutenant Matt Lafley, Virginia Tech grad, go Hokies. My parents will tell you since probably the age of 5 that my career path was going to be law enforcement. My grandfather is buried at Arlington Cemetery. Born and raised in Virginia, but those visits to the cemetery allowed me to become intrigued with Arlington. And when I graduated, I started, been here about 25 years. Recently promoted to lieutenant. I'm on midnight, so if you need anything during the midnight hours, give me a call. But I came out of recruiting where I was for 3 years. So that's what I'll do tonight, is talk to you about our recruiting efforts.
I'm Officer Brandon Jokes, and unlike some of my supervisors over here, I'm not much older than how long they've been on. I've been a police officer about 4 years. I've been here in Arlington for 2 years. Before that, I was in DC. I graduated from the College of New Jersey. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I'm currently getting my master's at Virginia Tech. I became a police officer because the impact that we make on people is important. Every time we speak to somebody, every time they call the police, whether it's the first time or the 50th time, you can impact their life in any way. And I realized that pretty early, being from New Jersey. It's law enforcement, the state police, you see a lot of the uniforms and the way that they conduct themselves, and I always wanted to have the morals and integrity of that job, and I believe I do, so that's why I became a police officer.
We asked Matt and Brandon to come today because I know there's some questions in the national narrative about diversity and recruiting and hiring police officers, and Matt just left our human resources department, and he was our primary source of recruiting, and had some wonderful ideas on how to more diversify and find those hard to reach areas where you can really get qualified candidates that may not necessarily want to be police officers or know they want to be police officers. And so they're here to talk a little bit about that. Brandon's in the ambassador program, and we have several officers that volunteer, and they'll go home, they'll go to different colleges and universities, different areas to share our story and to try and convince people or to let them know what Arlington is about and bring them in to here as police officers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate you all being here. So let's dive right in. I want to start by talking about the relationship between law enforcement and the community. So last month, Arlington Now published an article, and in there was a quote from Scott Wayneck, and I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly, who's the president of the Arlington Coalition Police. So according to him, the Arlington County police officers are well educated and they're highly trained. And he said officers are trained in de-escalation practices, implicit bias, conflict communication. And he also highlighted that 75% of the officers are certified in crisis intervention. So that was in June. And then in July, The police report was made public, but the report showed that over 50% of arrests made were of African American. So, in your opinion, has all of that training paid off? And can you explain to us how it is possible that 50% of those arrests are people of color? Can you shed some light on that for us?
Well, arrest-wise, and stats are sometimes difficult to qualify or quantify because it how they come about can be there. So you have policing, you have proactive policing like traffic stops, where police officers are doing that on their own. They see a traffic violation and they affect a traffic stop. Most arrests, they can come from traffic stops, but a lot of them are reactive arrests where we get called from a citizen about a crime occurring. We get there, we identify the crime, the suspect, whether the crime occurred, and we effect an arrest. So, for instance, we go to Pentagon City Mall for shoplifting, and they already have someone in custody. We go there, we don't really have a choice. If they committed a felony, we go to the mall, they say we want to prosecute, we arrest them. So that's not a proactive, that's a reactive arrest. And I don't believe we actually have specific numbers to what was proactive, what was reactive. So it'd be hard to really say exactly. But I know what we're doing now, there's the community policing law that just came out July 1st, and that is documenting every single time we stop someone on a traffic stop. And before we could stop and give someone a verbal warning or a written warning, but now we can still give verbal warnings, but we have to document everything on the summons. They don't necessarily have to get a summons, but it can say verbal warning. It says the reason for the stop, the location, the time, the race, gender, everything about the person. And that's a state law now, which I think is a good thing because it does check all the police departments and see exactly what they're doing proactively.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if that helps. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember in a previous conversation, you were talking about the population, how some of those arrests may not have been people who actually live here.
Correct. And if you go to our website, the commitment to the community, there's specific stats on that on the website where it has specific stats. But part of Arlington is we're in the National Capital Region, so we have 200,000 citizens in Arlington. But the National Capital Region is very transient, so we have people that travel through Arlington every day, whether it's from DC or Maryland or Alexandria or Fairfax or all over. I mean, people work from all the way down in Richmond, they come up here to work. So the stats that you would see, I would ask that you review stats from National Capital Region, not just Arlington residents for arrest numbers or traffic stop numbers. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense, because that would give you a more holistic view of the actual police enforcement.
Mm-hmm. So historically, we know that in minority communities, the relationship of the police department with minority communities have a history of distrust and not of partnership. How is that relationship here in Arlington from your perspective?
Well, historically, I mean, I grew up here, so I can tell you that historically, I think the police department has been reflective of the community. Have we been exactly as far as like the numbers, the breakdown? No, we strive to be reflective outside and inside. So I think that's one way. When I started, and I remember that they were like, man, first day in roll call, wow, we really need Spanish speakers, right? And you go to the calls, they see you, they see a person that looks like them, and you communicate. And, I think that between the efforts that we've done with our community policing, I think with our efforts to try to recruit and hire folks that have different cultural backgrounds, not just color, but we're talking, language abilities and life experience. Okay. So I think when we want to connect with our immigrant communities, or we want to connect with any community that could fall into the category of minority, that you have to start with yourself first. I think then when you go out and you do the outreach, what can we get involved in? And it's not just necessarily issues with crime. It could be quality of life issues, which don't necessarily always involve crime. Okay. But I think that, keeping it real simple, just make sure that the department, through different means and efforts, inside and outside, tries to be reflective of the community that it serves, responsive to their needs. And I can tell you that, take our Mongolian population, right? I would love to have a Mongolian officer. Okay. I go out and work when I still do a lot of work with Project Peace and a lot in doorways and a lot of the work that I still do, even though I'm not in special victims anymore, to help reduce domestic violence and sexual violence. And I work with a group of advocates that are Mongolian. And I'm always like, please, and I'm sure he would be thrilled. Well, he would have been thrilled when he was in recruiting to have someone from the Mongolian community, because it speaks volumes to the communities when you have someone that looks like them, speaks the language, and understands the culture. So, we have work to do, no doubt. But I think over the years, I can honestly tell you that, between different things that we do inside and outside with the community, we really try to be reflective of the folks that we serve.
I see several questions about hiring, and that's why we brought Matt and Brandon here. They'll talk to some of it. But Ms. Turner, I think it's Ms. Turner, asked about role reversal and with the police department and how it could help sensitize officers and citizens. And one thing, we understand we're not perfect, just like no business or no one in society is perfect, and our profession is not perfect, but we're trying to take a look at what we can do. And I really believe and the question, the great question, because I really believe is, as police officers, we need to try and look from the lens of the citizen as how they're seeing us. Instead of defending ourselves all the time, let's look at how the citizen perceives us. And if we can look at that lens, just like the citizen can look at the lens from a police officer's view, maybe we can all understand exactly what we're doing. Because we have a police academy that is like 8 weeks, but we only a Citizens Police Academy, which I think we do once a year. We're trying to expand it a little bit more. And in the community resources, we're working on special projects like Behind the Badge and a couple of other things, which are shortened versions where we can do with youth or with citizens, and kind of put them in scenarios and explain what we're doing and why we're doing things. So I think that's a great question. And for us to be able to share what we do, and for us also to be willing to look from a different lens, I think that can help everyone and make some progress.
And just so you know, in the CIT training, the crisis intervention training, I still help out. I'm an instructor. And what we do there is we work with like NAMI, which is a great source of information and advocacy. So we can work with families of folks that have loved ones with mental health issues. And when we craft our role play in our basic class, it's a 40-hour class, we actually use real scenarios of folks that we have encountered to help the officers have an environment as best as can be, right? Because we can't simulate reality. I mean, reality is reality. That's the best teacher. But we also want to have officers understand the concepts that we're teaching them, have consumers come in and talk about it. And so I think that, the role reversal is a great way to get officers, especially young officers, but, even someone as old as me, a veteran, to open their eyes and see, okay, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. But base that training on situations where maybe, unfortunately, things didn't go well. So, I think it's a great concept. We try to incorporate it as much as we can, but we're always looking for new ideas as well.
Okay. Thank you for that. In light of the Black Lives Matter movement, how do you reconcile Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, or do you? Is it one movement versus the other? What is that like to you?
I'm having trouble hearing the question.
I was asking about, can you hear me a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay. I was asking about the Black Lives Matter movement. How do you reconcile Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, or do you? Is it one against the other? How do you deal with it being an officer?
Well, I think each officer has their own perspective and their own story of how they deal with it. It's as I was saying earlier, is personally I'm trying to look from the other lens instead of defending my profession. I want to look at the other lens and say, okay, I might be defending it, but what are they seeing? And maybe I need to take a hard look and how can I improve, even though maybe I didn't think something was going on, but something's going on. Obviously, there's something that needs to be worked on. And with Arlington, we're reviewing all of our policies. We've added some things like, for instance, the duty to intervene, which was part of 8 Can't Wait. We've always trained on duty to intervene, but it wasn't actually in our policy. We had duty to report and some other things, and it was understood, and it was, if something's going wrong, you stop it, but it wasn't in there. But we added that into our policy, so that is now in there. It's written down, so it's very clear. But that's part of the policy review we're going through, and I'm sure you've heard the county's doing a review as well, but we've already started a policy review before that. So now we have 2 forums to do that. So make sure we're in line with current standards. And there's a lot of policing, new era policing, the 21st century policing, different models out there that are recommendations for the police department. And we feel like we follow those pretty well, but at the same time, we can still make improvements.
Thank you. Hey, Lauren, do you have any questions regarding the police department and the community?
Yes, there's a question earlier from L. Turner that says, what if any measures have been or will be addressed and or implemented to educate, train, and monitor police behaviors and tactics to create a genuine racial and cultural respect for citizens of the Broward Hues that live in Arlington? So, could be like specifics for training or education that police are being given to level the playing field and make sure there's no racial bias.
So I think we addressed a little bit of that in the conversation so far. But it starts in the academy, and we have the implicit bias training, various different training, and this is all on the website. And then we have the crisis intervention training, which is helps with various different things. And then when it comes to systems of check and balances, we have our Office of Professional Responsibility. And so they field all complaints, racially biased complaints, anything else. And in that are internal affairs, which it might be better known as. There's the early intervention program, which is if an officer starts getting a certain number of complaints, it kind of rings a bell and says, hey, this officer, Pilco, he's got a certain number of complaints. Let's look at why he's getting these complaints and really take a deep dive into the complaints. He may have had 1 or 2, but okay, even though he wasn't found sustained in those complaints, but now there's a pattern of complaints. So let's look at them and see if there's anything really there. So there's a lot of systems in place to check to see that the officers are doing. And one of the other questions that had been said is, what are we doing for wellness for the officers? And when it comes to complaints and stuff like that, but we have other systems in place with the peer support and EAP, which is the Emergency Assistance Program or Employee Assistance Program. There's also a fitness for duty where we can see a psychologist if we're having issues, or if the early intervention program shows that the officer may be having some issues, whether it's stress related or something at home or something at work, to help with that so it doesn't affect his or her work.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now, friends, we would like to talk about accountability. So could you tell us what are some of the ways that the police department holds itself accountable?
Well, that, again, I just addressed a little bit of that with the internal affairs, but we have citizens can make complaints in multiple different ways. They can do it anonymous, they can do it online, they can make a phone call, they can call an emergency communications center, and the complaint will be fielded by either, depending on the level of complaint or what it is, it'll go to our Office of Professional Responsibility, or it can go to the officer supervisor. And then they will review the complaint and determine exactly what it is. And anytime there's a complaint, it can come into four things. It can be sustained, not sustained, exonerated, or unfounded. Sustained means it happened, and he or she is guilty. Not sustained means it's a he said, she said, like something may have happened, they can't prove it either way. Unfounded means it doesn't happen. Exonerated means it happened, but they didn't do anything wrong. So that's the investigation part of it. But as you've probably seen, we're going to body worn cameras. We've finally received the funding for that, which obviously is big for accountability, because anytime there's a complaint and the camera's on, then they'll be able to see exactly what it is. Prior to that, and currently, we have in-car cameras and microphones which capture just about everything, especially in the car. It will capture many things, and it has, and sometimes it exonerates officers and sometimes it doesn't. But it's good to know in this digital age exactly what's there and exactly what happened. Anything?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing, honestly, is we try to be as transparency, I think, always comes up in these discussions. And I think the systems in place now address a lot. But to be honest with you, I think we look to folks like you know, holding us accountable, telling us, you know what, this really doesn't look like it works. Or if you don't think it works, engaging us in conversation so we can find a common ground to either improve it or help your understanding of it. Because I think that's also where, you know, we have to find that common ground. I don't expect that anyone in this hour or so that we speak to have the knowledge of police work that, you know, I mean, you have here over 100 and some years of policing, right? So I think what I always look forward to is those tough questions, is that challenge. Are you doing everything that you can do to make sure that we're holding ourselves to a high standard, we're meeting your standards, and if we're not meeting your standards, then please engage us and help us understand, because, you know, we can walk away and agree to disagree. That's human. But I can't walk away, and I know that the folks that I walk away with can't walk away if we don't feel like we've done everything we could to engage you, to inform you, and to listen to you.
I also think that with community policing, that's been the backbone of our agency. We have done that for 20 years. Before community policing was cool, we were doing it. So we're in the community. We have the ears of the community. We're listening to the community. If you follow us on Facebook, you'll see the daily interaction we do in the community. And that draws, when we're out recruiting, young men and women will tell us that's one of the reasons they're drawn to our agency, because they've seen that we've been involved in community policing well before it became popular.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, we have an example of our community policing who's here and would like to come in and say hi. Come on, Brooks, come on in.
So we just did a press release, and this is, I don't know if you'll be able to see.
Can you lift them up?
Come on, Brooks.
Put them on the chair.
This is one of our newer programs. So this is our therapy dog that we just received a couple weeks ago. He is a 8-month-old, I think.
Yeah, 8 months.
8 months, I got it right. Yellow lab. And he is part of the first responder canine program. And the goal of that is Officer Ryan has agreed to be his handler for 2 years. So it's a heck of a commitment. But his goal is to you know, some of the questions are about wellness and some other things for officers and citizens. Well, a dog just kind of lightens people's day. So right now with the COVID, he's kind of stuck in the station mostly, and he'll visit different parts of the floor and just say hi and let officers hang out with him. But the goal is to let him out in the community as well and bring him to events and just be part of it. He's not a canine in the typical canine police dogs. He's a dog that you pet and play with. And ultimately, once he's fully trained, he will be given to a person in need to be his or her dog. And so we really think it's a nice program, and it's an experimental program for us. It's our first one we've had, but we're really looking forward to it. And he's already made a great impression on a lot of people here. Everyone keeps asking when Brooks is coming along. So we wanted him to come up because I know there were some wellness questions, and he's part of our kind of our wellness initiative for officers and for the county. So you have any questions for Brooks?
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Thank you both.
Still speaking
You, buddy.
It was a great guest. And speaking about accountability and speaking of internal complaints. So we also saw in the report that the personnel complaints rose in 2019. So our question is, are officers encouraged to speak up if they see their colleagues use excessive force or any abuse of power?
Absolutely, and that comes down to the duty to report and duty to intervene. Is Arlington is a very, very transparent, at least I feel it is we have, and I think you can see on the paperwork, we have more internal complaints generated than we do external complaints. I don't have the numbers, I actually have them here, it's on our website that you can look at from the annual report from OPR, but we do have many more internal opposed to external, and I think that's an example of how Arlington really does police themselves, and it's a testament to the officers and the integrity of them, that they want to make sure we do things right, and they hold each other accountable. Can you hear me with this on? I know it's kind of difficult.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Also, speaking about the report also said that the department's use of force rose by 72%. Can you tell us why that is?
It did. Was it 72%? Was that the number? So in July of 2019, we changed our use of force policy. Our use of force policy used to basically require reporting when there was a use of a deadly weapon or an impact weapon. It would be a gun or a taser or a ASP or pepper spray, or the complaint of injury, or if there is an injury. So if there's an obvious injury to a citizen or a complaint of injury. We adjusted that in July of last year to reflect anything basically beyond normal handcuffing. So that way we could document more interactions. So use of force, if you're trying to handcuff someone and they start fighting with you, that now becomes a use of force even if they're not injured. So obviously the numbers would go up considerably because we do often have to interact physically with citizens, especially when we want to take them to jail. And that is the reason why it went up so much, not because we're using more force or the citizens are fighting more. It's just better documentation.
And with that, I'm sorry.
And it's increasing our transparency, so you guys, the citizens, really know exactly what's happening.
And with that information, also we can look at the situations. And as the captain said, if we identify someone who might need some refresher training on their de-escalation skills, or if we find someone that may need a refresher in defensive tactics, because getting someone into custody most of the time is not a problem, but also oftentimes you see folks struggling because they don't want to go to jail or whatever. We want to make sure that we're giving the officers the best tools, whether it's on their belt or their person, communication, whatever it is. So if we're not capturing all the moments where we actually have to use some kind of force that goes beyond handcuffing, then I think we lose a lot of valuable information that can be used for training, but also, as Lieutenant said, transparency. We can say to you, this is what happened. Now, over the course of the next couple of years, it should balance out, right? But either way, if you approach us about something and there's a concern, as long as we don't violate any confidentiality, we can talk about it. We can look at it and see if there's something to be gleaned from that.
Thank you. Hey, Lauren, do you have any questions on accountability?
Can we cover it? No, but I do have a question about something else that was touched on earlier, but there have been a couple of questions about diversity in the police force. So can we get some specific examples of how you're working to increase diversity in the police force, meaning women and people of color?
Yeah. So I can talk on that and give you some specific numbers. I'll start with, we looked 3 years ago, we looked at our recruiting process. It had gotten very difficult to even get applicants to come to our testing or to apply to our agency. So we had to start from scratch and figure out what are some of the barriers and how can we help with that. You can certainly understand the cost of living in this region is very high. And the hiring process for law enforcement is very unique. There's several steps that we hire representatives and the right people to do the job. Over the last 3 years, looking at our hires, 31% have been females over the last 3 years. 16% have been Black. Looking at the recent demographics for the Arlington community that just came out, 8.5% of our community is Black. We've hired 16% of our workforce has been Black over the last 3 years. When you look at the Asian Hispanic community, demographics show that 10.2% of Arlington matches those demographics. Ours have been 17% hires. We're very proud of that. How did we get there? It wasn't easy. Brandon is an example of our ambassador program. So these are young men and women we've recently hired in the past 2 to 3 years. So we went to them and said, what were some of the challenges for you to get into our agency? Expense. We know college is not, there's 3 ways into our agency. 2 years active duty military, honorable discharge. If you're currently a police officer with 1 year of solo patrol, you can get in. Or you need a minimum of 60 college credits and a clean background. So we do spend a lot of our recruiting efforts on colleges and military bases. So when you're talking about a 4 to 5 to 6 month process to get to our hiring process, you're asking a kid who's already spending a lot of money in college to come to Arlington to get a hotel room and to travel. That was one of the things we heard. So we took a enclosed box trailer we had, we wrapped it, and we put our physical agility testing equipment inside. We purchased 10 Chromebooks. We have an entry-level exam you must take and pass. So instead of asking all these students and military to come to us, we went to them. Each college and each military base has a career services department. Their job, and I learned this when I got to recruiting because I called Virginia Union University in Richmond to sign up for a career fair. Their job is to connect employers with their students to get them hired. And talking with Virginia Union Career Services, they're like Sergeant Laffin. We'd love to have you on campus. There's anything you can think of to engage our students, to mentor our students, we're open to. So we were willing to come to them, to test them, and to do the physical agility test. But to increase our mentoring engagement, Brandon is an example of sending Brandon to career fairs. That expanded to meeting professors and having our young officers speak in the classroom. To mentoring these students from freshmen up on what is it like to be a police officer currently? What are going to be the expectations in the hiring process when you graduate. Inviting these students to our agency and opening our doors. So while they're in college or in the military, they can do a ride-along, which increased dramatically for us. We working with other agencies, when you took our test, you have to have an extensive packet you bring with you on your history, transcripts, all this at the testing table. Well, another agency realized that that was hurting their diversity numbers. That was a lot to ask for a student to find time or to have all this. So we took that off the table. We allowed them to test without the packet. We saw our numbers increase. At testing, we encourage semi-professional dress attire. Now we're going to get into our internal bias. That is not easy for a student to have a suit and tie or a well-dressed dress, etc. What I saw at a lot of colleges and universities now is in their career services, they have a room full of suits and professional dress attires for females. Alumni are donating these. So a student can come by and check out a suit or dress attire for an interview. So on our testing, we asked that they wear their workout gear. Everybody has shorts and a t-shirt. We combined our testing and our physical agility test on the same day. They used to be separate days. So when everybody walks in the room, we don't look at somebody that has this beautiful suit and tie on over somebody that just doesn't have the means or ends to have that suit. So now we level the playing field when they come for that. And the whole goal is to mentor, to go to these people, to limit any barriers that would allow them in. We've even had a family that offered to house one of our young officers who came from a rural area that just graduated from college, and they housed them for 12 months for the first year to get them acclimated, to let their salary catch up. So you understand how expensive apartments are and housing are in this region. That is, I repeatedly heard that as a barrier in our hiring process. I'm going to let Brandon talk a little bit about it. He is one of our excellent ambassadors. He's worked very close with Virginia State University in that process.
So I'm ambassador of Virginia State University, and so I started saying I didn't even go there, but I formulated a really good relationship with them, a strong relationship with them, and it got to the point where I'll come to the criminal justice classes and I was able to give a full presentation, a lecture, if you will, and I haven't done that ever. Now, the results of that were really great, and I think one of the most important parts of that was I came in dressed even less formal than the polo I'm wearing right now. And being from New Jersey, a lot of police departments, you want to see the uniform, you want to see all that, but certain schools, certain people don't want to see that. So it was encouraged to come in jeans, sneakers, and that actually made us more approachable. Even though I wasn't giving a lecture, I was at a career fair, and the amount of people that came up to speak to us compared to the departments, not speaking badly about other departments, but departments with their full uniform on, was staggering. And I think we got people interested or thinking about being a police officer who didn't want to be a police officer or had negative interactions with a police officer. And that goes back to what I said before, why I want to be a police officer, is that our one interaction with them was positive, and it was a little bit different than what is going on now.
If there are any recent graduates watching, handshake is a valuable recruiting tool. A lot of the people we interact with them through their phones. We can engage them. We're just trying to break the barriers down, start the conversation, let them come see us, look at the expenses they're up against. And it's worked. We've seen it work, and we're always willing to meet with anybody. If you have any suggestions or ideas, we're open to it. Even through COVID, the safety measures we put in, a lot of agencies had to shut down shop during the initial phases of COVID. We met with doctors, we looked at safe ways to keep the process moving, and we're putting in a significant number of officers into this academy class. So I know what we've done has worked. We've made it a agency-wide effort. We interact with our community, but anybody that has any suggestions, I'm always eager to learn. If it's not tonight and you want to reach out to us on the side, we encourage you.
There was an article that was published in the Washington Post last month saying that diversity in the force does not necessarily lead to better policing. I am guessing that you don't agree with that statement, because it seems like you said that with the increase of diversity, you have been able to make an impact in the community. Was that right?
I didn't catch the last part.
It seems like you mentioned that increasing diversity in the force has made an impact in the community. Is that right? That you would not agree with that article?
I strongly agree diversity is valued in our agency. Understanding different points of view, different engagement. I think Lieutenant Pilko is right. You know, if you go into a certain community and you have a representative of that community, that's a valuable tool.
So, and I think what you're getting at, or what the article is getting at, I did not read that article, but the diversity of the force is a starting step, but it still comes down to the quality of officer, the quality of training on that force. And if you can hire whoever you want, but if you don't train them properly, it doesn't help for the quality of policing, if that makes sense. And so there is a strong consideration for training when it's in the academy. We have our own training unit here post-academy that they work on training every day. It's a little more difficult now when we can't do a lot of training because we can't with the COVID, but the constant training, the constant concentration on different interpersonal skills and everything they do, whether it's the CIT training or the implicit bias or whatever, that's how the police departments become better. That's my belief.
Well, and then also, you know, with your measure of success, I can tell you when I started training in CIT, before CIT, and a measure of success, you know, was did we decrease the level of force used and with encounters with folks that have mental health issues? Did we improve the access to services? Did we improve the diversion so folks aren't being arrested for petty crimes such as trespassing, such as, you know, what's commonly referred to as loitering or disorderly conduct, right? So that's how a lot of departments before we really started focusing on mental health dealt with it. With regards to whether a more diverse workforce leads to a better relationship with the community, the challenge really, honestly, is I always say to the officers, and all of us were there, get out of the car, talk to someone. You know, don't wait for the radio to tell you what to do and direct you to calls. Get out, meet the business owners, talk to that kid playing basketball. You know, I can tell you that what I love about this job is every day is different. You have the opportunity to engage. You have the opportunity to get to know your communities. You know, one of the things that we stress with the geo policing that we instituted a while ago that's morphed into what we have now is getting to know your constituents, getting to know the people you work for. So if for some reason in the article, and I didn't read it either, you know, that didn't work, then all I can tell you is that for our perspective, the training, the standards we hold ourselves accountable to, the efforts we go to recruit diverse folks, not just on the outside, but on the inside, you know, different upbringings. We have folks that have traveled the world, speak multiple languages. We have lawyers, we have engineers, we have pre-med students, and all of that diversifies your workforce. So if someone can send me that article, I'd love to read it. But at the end of the day, I gotta think no matter who or whom you hire, they've got to engage the community.
And I can see one of the questions. We currently actively recruited 11 HBCU schools, and that number increases daily thanks to Handshake.
Handshake, I don't know if he explained it. That's a phone app. That's an app where they can go out and reach out to people, which is the new age of doing anything with young kids. We're a little older, but Brandon could attest to it. The 18s, the 30s, I think, see Lauren smiling because that's how she does everything. I imagine everything is done on this. Even we do it now, but to really get out and reach out to today's youth is through the phone. And so the Handshake app and Matt was telling me about just a little bit ago, is a fantastic device to really reach out and share who we are and to draw them in to come look at us.
Yes. Let's Brandon will talk about that.
So Handshake, for people who don't know, is an app that, like I said before, it's for recruiting. It can help recruiting. So the difference with that, other than emails, is that you can put in an app and say, hey, I'm going to be on campus at 2 o'clock today or 2 o'clock tomorrow, just for you to drop by, come get more information on Arlington County. And like Sergeant Lafley said before, we go to the campuses, or we did before COVID, to help with travel expenses for people who want to be police officers or people who have an interest in us. With Handshake, you send out a message, and it would literally guide you every step of the way. So if you did the PT test and you did well, if you have an interview coming up, you go through the Handshake app and show when it's coming up next. Now, one of the better parts about it as well is we can also look and see who are the people who are interested in policing, demographics, where they are, where they're from, their major, everything like that. And we can also put ourselves on there for them to reach out to us. And it's a two-way street, and it's extremely important, and they can do it at any time. So it's not like email where certain people might only read their email when they're at work or not on the weekend. Especially with us as ambassadors being younger, 24/7, if someone who's interested in being a police officer wants to speak to me and I'm on my day off and it's late at night, I'll still talk to you. I have no problem with that. I love speaking to people about wanting to be a police officer, especially people who aren't interested in it or people who never wanted to do it, because people who are open to having that conversation, that's important. That's going to make the biggest impact.
When we did the first test run, we picked 3 schools, and we sent an email with a click of a button to students in criminal justice and political science, just to see what the response was. That's about 1,000 students at 3 schools. We had a 48% open rate. They instantly, like Lauren probably would engage us. Hey, Sergeant Lafley, I am interested in law enforcement. I have a few questions. It was so overwhelming that we've actually, Sergeant Jakolski in our ROSA program has all our ambassadors selecting a school to keep that engagement 24/7, because we would have students reach out to us at 1 a.m. in the morning, and we have officers working at 1 a.m. in the morning. And when they have downtime, they can engage those with simple questions. What's the process like? So we're really opening ourselves up to anybody that's interested.
And it helps start that mentorship, like Lieutenant Lafley said before. As you're guiding the person through every step of the process, they spoke to that officer, that ambassador, for a reason. So that connection is important, and it will work through the whole time you're hired if the person gets hired. And that happened with me. Someone, he moved on to federal agencies, but he got me to go to Arlington, and we are extremely close, or still close to this day. And throughout my time here, when he was here, we had a really good relationship, and he was my mentor. And that was extremely important.
One additional aspect of recruiting is our internship program, which is housed in the homicide robbery unit where I was not too long ago. And that's kind of close to my heart, and Matt can attest to it. It's a highly sought after position. We have interns. We have 3 sessions of interns in the summer, the fall semester, and the spring semester. Unfortunately, right now it's kind of slowed down because we had to slow down for COVID. But it's a highly sought after position. We usually take 10 to 12 interns each semester, each session, and we'll get 40 to 60 to 75 applications just for those positions. It is a national capital region, and internships are huge around here. But this is one of the highly sought after ones because it's very interactive. You come in and you talk to citizens. Maybe some of you have actually talked to them, and you learn what it's like to be a police officer, what it's like to be a detective. And we usually hire one or two or more out of each session. And a lot of them never even wanted to be police officers. They came in and they just found out the satisfaction of helping people. And they're like, LT was, I want to be a police officer. Can I apply? Absolutely, please. We're bringing you in here to teach you one way or the other. Even if you don't want to be a police officer, you learn what we're doing and maybe understand it a little more than you did before you came here. But it's nice to see young men and women that had no interest in being police who actually now want to do it. That's a very effective part of the intern program.
Thank you so much for giving us all that information and an inside look on what the efforts that you were taking towards diversity. I wanted to shift gears for a little bit. And it seems like over the past several years, the job description of police officers has increased. Not only do you have to fight crime, but you also have to help people during a mental health crisis, put them in contact with social service providers, and etc. And then in the past couple of weeks, we have been hearing about police defunding. Do you feel like some of those non-crime related calls should go to other departments instead of to the police department? Or do you feel like the police department is better equipped to answer those calls?
Well, I'll touch a little bit on it, and I'm gonna let Tom talk about a new program we've implemented here in the last couple of months. But the defunding the police or sending stuff elsewhere, we are asked to do a lot of things. And Arlington County is, we will respond to, if you call, we're gonna come. It doesn't matter what it's for. If you have a deer in your backyard and they won't leave, we'll call, and that's happened, and they call the police and we open the back gate and they run out. But that's what's special about Arlington is we're like a Swiss Army knife. We can do anything and we're willing to do anything. And that's what I love about working here is because where I lived before, my wife had her purse stolen from her office and it took the police 5 hours to get there. And she had to sit there in a closed office waiting for the police to show up. And that doesn't happen here. And that's for a real crime. We'll show up in 5 minutes for a deer in your backyard. And that's what's special here. We do have our role has grown over the years as other places may have been defunded or not given the necessary care or necessary improvements that they need. But like we just started the co-responder program, which is a mental health worker will go out with the police. And so if there's a mental health call, now we have the social worker and the officer that can go and respond together, and they can work it out. So they're not just seeing a police officer, they're seeing someone that's trained to really engage them. Now we have that training, so if we're by ourselves, we can still do it, but we're not professionals. One of the programs we just started, which we're really proud of, is called the Homeless Outreach Program, or the HOP. And Sergeant Mikowski will talk a little bit about that, but it's evidence of a multi-pronged approach to solve a problem and not put a Band-Aid on it. It's really to solve it and get people the services they need. So Tom, if you want to address it. Tom.
Yeah, sure. I could talk for a long time about that homeless outreach program. It's really something else, but I'll try to hit the high points. But the funding, we haven't seen a change in it. We respond to the same calls with the same care and attention that we have. It seems to me over the 25 years, are there things we would prefer not to respond to? Noise complaint, some sort of code violations that may be better handled administratively? Sure. Dealing with people in mental health crisis. Okay. The thing about the police department is we're open 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, in the rain and in the snow, and all that together. So we're sort of the natural starting point for someone who is having a quality of life issue? Is it a business? Is it a condo association? Is it a residence? Or is it other homeless people? We're the ones who get the first call. We respond to these things. And our officers it's very frustrating for an officer to not be able to do something. You go to a call for a homeless person that's, it's cold or whatever, and you want to be able to help them, and you don't have the resources available. So what we decided to do was, let's get everyone together in the same group. Police department, ASPAN, DHS, a veterans group, the housing department for the county, and let's all work together and share information and share resources. So rubber meets the road. We have a group of somebody from most of those organizations who go out several times a week in cars, and they all drive together and they contact homeless people where they are. You know, whether it be by a bridge over here by the courthouse, and they go up to them and they engage them. They give them food and water, some safety bags, some sanitary items, and things of that nature. And they come in from that end. What do you need? What can we help you with? The response is overwhelming. The success is overwhelming. We just had a housing lottery here in the county. I don't know the results yet, but our people with the homeless outreach program took laptops along with DHS out to several sites in the county and got people who are homeless. And not all people are homeless are mentally ill or substance abuse. Some people are homeless because they're between jobs or they just got on a job. They don't have enough for first month, last month's security deposit. So we help them get email addresses, get contact information so they can sign up for this housing lottery. And fingers crossed, we'll get them into some housing here. But we offer them, by having everybody there, DHS, ASPAN, us, we have a one-stop shop where if someone has substance abuse issues, let's get them the resources and help. If someone has mental health issues, they talk to them and say, they know these people. They know that person down 23rd needs gets a shot every month and is kind of due for that one soon. So they go and contact them, remind them, hey, remember, you need to get this shot. And they say, okay, I'm taking the bus tomorrow to get it. It's a very personalized level. It's a very effective level. It breaks down a barrier between police and homeless. They don't see us when an officer in uniform approaches them. It's totally changed the dynamic. Totally changed the dynamic. They see us coming there, someone to solve a problem or help them. Many of them are victims of crime, totally unreported. You know, we come across people who are bruised and battered. They don't want to say anything about what happened, but they've been victimized. So we're there to help them. I've been out when we encounter somebody who says, hey, I want to report that X, Y, or Z happened. They would have never reported that if we weren't going out to them. So, just to wrap up, that's been a program that's been effective because it's been multidisciplinary and we've been involved. People want to remove police from that. I'm not sure that that's a great answer, in my opinion, because we are there 24/7. We do get the phone calls from 911 and dispatch center, and we do encounter people in our daily rounds that are homeless and that need our help and need us to be involved. So I think that going forward, that's something that people need to keep in mind as the conversation progresses. I don't know what the correct answer is, but let's keep that in mind as this moves forward.
And I think a lot to just add on to that, and it's collaborative efforts. If you look at what succeeds in the community, especially when it comes to government service, right? The collaborative efforts with nonprofits, with community-based organizations, systems-based organizations, because at the end of the day, if he has the ability to understand more about the homeless situation, mental health situation, whatever it might be, then he has more tools. So he could say, you know what? I learned this from Officer Keene, Sergeant Murkowski. Hold on a second, sir. All right, make a phone call. Boom, you get a hotel room for the night. Make a phone call. Boom, your counselor now knows where you're hanging your head. and your counselor from DHS is going to be out here tomorrow to talk to you because you've fallen off the grid. And the thing is, it's an eye opener. I don't think any of us, at least for me, I can say when we started this job, mental health, homelessness, to me, I was like, wow. I mean, I was very naive. Okay. So now that we have folks that are saying, you know, whatever the narrative is about us doing too much or whatever, I'm not going to get into that. What I will say is our partnerships are how we succeed, how we help the community, whether they're homeless, whether they're mental health. So I'm very proud of the work that these folks have done, but I'm also very proud of the relationships and the collaborative efforts and that we have with other agencies.
Thank you.
I think one thing is important too, if somebody needs help, we don't want them guessing. Do we call or do we not call? You know, we're there. We're there to start the process for help.
Thank you so much for that. Hey, Lauren, what question do you have for us?
Well, earlier you were talking about engaging with the younger generation. So on that topic, school resource officers, police officers in schools. I myself have seen officers at Wakefield, where I go to school, and students of color feel that they are singled out and traumatized by the presence of adults with guns and handcuffs in the school. So can you speak to the role and necessity of these officers?
Real quick, back to, you're right, I have two things to say about the homeless outreach program. During COVID, we were able to place several homeless individuals that were tested positive in some housing and monitor them and help them. And one of the best statements I've heard was just happened. Officer Keene had a homeless subject bring another homeless person up to him and said, "Oh, you're Officer Keene, I hear you help people." And to me, that is what it's all about. SROs. Lieutenant Poco is basically in charge of our SROs, and you want to say that? You want me to
So no, thank you, Kevin. So I was an SRO for many years, about 8 total, and I have to say that it is a discussion that is definitely worth having. I can only tell you my successes and the successes of the unit. I can't speak to other jurisdictions, but having an officer in the school, we currently, if you have the opportunity, we have a memorandum of understanding with Arlington APS, okay? And our memorandum of understanding, our MOU, clearly delineates what our roles and responsibilities are. Our role is not discipline. If I see someone doing something in the hallway and it is what maybe 20 years ago a school officer might say, hey, no running in the hallway, or don't do this silliness, whatever. You know what? We see it. If there's an administrator, go get the administrator and say, hey, you know what? So-and-so, there's some issue. Can you please help them out? Our job, honestly, in the schools is to help build these relationships. I can tell you that, personally speaking, it's been a tough 2 weeks for me because I've had 2 former students pass away. And I got a phone call from the mother of one of them. And she's like, hey, I want to tell you that so-and-so passed away. Okay. I got a phone call a couple of months ago from a kid who passed away. These are all adults now. Had passed away a year prior. The mom's cleaning out his stuff, reminiscing, and says, you know what? I never told Coco that he passed away. Okay. So, the officers joke around when they see kids in the street. They're like, oh, do you know Coco? From my coaching, from my working in the schools. We want to establish relationships with children in school to help them become better people. I can tell you that a lot of kids see the SROs in the hallways, they don't engage. But I can tell you what, when they're not there, a lot of them are like, where's so-and-so? They might have an issue they want to talk about, or just that sense of security, right? The issues that come to the forefront in the schools, when, people refer to the school to prison pipeline, I can tell you this much. I have data and I can show you, we did a presentation. I don't know if any of you saw the presentation that myself and Dr. Allen did for the school board in January. And we basically talked about the stuff that was reported to police that had to be reported by state law and where all that stuff went. And we went from, anecdotally, I'll say the numbers were like less than 200, so it's like 180 some cases in a year. And all of those ended up in 15 that ended up in court action with like, I think 3 that were found guilty, okay? And the persons who were introduced into the criminal justice system was at the request of the schools or the victim. And that's one thing we have to remember in all of this, right? When we talk about defunding and all these other things, pulling back, is just like Lieutenant Lafley said. You pick up the phone, you expect the police, that victim, his or her rights to have their the services, whether it's to remove them from a violent situation, whether it's to advocate on their behalf because of stolen, damaged property, whatever. That's our primary job. So officers in the schools, when they deal with the matter, I can tell you, empirically speaking, the majority, vast majority of the time is because it was brought to their attention. Our memorandum of understanding is very clear what we can and cannot do. I love it. I wish we would have had it when I was an SRO, because our SROs now can focus on teaching substance abuse prevention. They can work on the mentoring. They can coach. We have coaches, like I coached when I was an SRO. We have coaches for football. We have coaches for volleyball, basketball, track. And I can tell you, I just kind of like worry that we're really not looking at this objectively, because, at the end of the day, I can tell you that we have formed so many great relationships with kids, their families, the communities. If any of you guys have ever heard of Officer Jackie Pagan, she was an officer at Kenmore. She was featured on Good Morning America. I can tell you that that send-off, if that doesn't speak volumes to what we try to do in the schools, I have nothing more to say. If somebody doesn't see that and find the value in that, but I don't want to be tone deaf. Also, I want to understand that the national narrative has a lot of important information and things that we can glean from folks that might not feel as safe as we think they should. So I think the discussions, are great, and I would hope that we'll be a part of this if APS decides to go down that route. But I can just tell you that from our perspective, the roles that we play, is mentors, is obviously first responders, right? Active shooters, whatever might happen in the school, but also just to be that representative of the law enforcement community that is there to help, and overwhelmingly does not do very much law enforcement. If anything, they do all the other stuff I talked about. But at the end of the day, though, we are very, very cautious to make sure that those children get the help that they might need, and that if we're engaged, we're very clear about the need to, if we have to divert, right? We have a program called Second Chance where we refer kids for marijuana or tobacco and alcohol, right? Because marijuana is still illegal for juveniles. And, we have Second Chance. We also have opportunities now with restorative justice coming to really hand off some of that stuff to the school. I mean, we talk about school not taking, police not doing everything, right? So restorative justice will give us that opportunity. And we're engaged with restorative justice with the county. We have officers that are representatives working to find a model that works for us. But APS is also very well engaged in restorative justice. And I'm excited for what SROs will look like in the future. But at the end of the day, I can just tell you my experience, our experience in Arlington County has been a very positive one. And actually, it is a very diverse group as well. We have, just amazing men and women. And, I like to brag about them because they really are trying their best to reach these kids and, try to obviously steer them clear of bad things, but also, represent us, the police, in the best possible light and offer whatever services they might need.
Thank you. So friends, I have one more question, our final question, and I apologize to everybody else who had questions. We already passed our time, but I would like to ask you, how can we as citizens be helpful to bridging the gap between in the areas that need to be, I'm sorry, let me ask this again. How can we as private citizens be helpful in bringing about racial equality, and how can the church be a part of the solution?
I think it's what we're doing right now, is engaging, building that conversation, building the community engagement on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and keeping the lines of communication open. If you see something, say something. I mean, with anything, but it's with police department. And then, like with community outreach, we are when I came here a month or so ago, we have a bunch of young officers in the unit, and I told them, I said, use your imagination. How can we engage the community? I've been here 25 years. My ideas aren't what your ideas are. Let's see what we can do to engage and teach about what we are and learn about the community, what the community wants. And if we have these conversations and you tell us what you need or how we can do things, that's how we can move on and be better. And all of us can be better. None of us are perfect in any part of anything we do. So, and to me, that's how we can do it, is continue this conversation and really talk about it. And if you see something the police are doing wrong, ask. Hey, I saw this the other day. It didn't look right. What happened? And we will find out. And we might say, well, this is what you saw, but this is what you thought you saw. This is what actually happened, and this is why this happened. Or, hey, thank you, Nilsi. Something happened that wasn't supposed to, and we've corrected it. And I think that's how you do that. You hold us accountable. We hold ourselves accountable. And when you have that system in place, it won't be perfect, but it will be better and continue to be better. And that's why we believe so hardly in Arlington, because we think we already have a good system in place. We can be better, but we think we're on the right track.
And if you see a patrol officer out there and they're in between calls, say hi to them. Start the conversation. They're eager to talk. They will. Our chief encourages that. We want that interaction. So don't, just say hi. Start the conversation.
I would say, and everyone's gonna have to give a little points, but honestly, challenge your elected officials. We used to have a block party that we did at Kenmore. Anybody ever go to that block party that we did a couple of years ago at Kenmore, right? Wonderful event, costs a lot of money. And what our priorities are, right? That was a great opportunity to get the community to meet the police. And I mean, it was just fantastic. We did a lot of what we're talking about here, and we quit doing it because it costs a lot of money. So one, two, challenge your lawmakers to increase services for mental health, increase services for homelessness. We've got a housing crisis coming up with people trying to pay rent and mortgages. So, I tend to think that, sometimes the spotlight, will shine one place, but in reality, I think this is a wonderful opportunity to really get the spotlight on other places as well. Because, the police, if we're dealing with it, it's a problem, right? So, even though we're doing great things with homeless outreach, we're doing, great things with CIT, with crisis intervention training, there's so much more room. And I live in Arlington, so I know I get out and vote and try to get, work with whomever is my representative. And as a citizen, I have to balance that between being also a government employee. But I thank you for the time. I thank you for the opportunity. If you can find that article in the post you referenced, please email it to Captain Linda or myself. And lastly, we're doing a youth equity initiative. So I've got 2 SROs that are actively looking to engage young people in conversations just like this. Please, if you have a youth ministry or you know any group that wants to engage in small, maybe 10 to 15 group discussion, whether it's via Zoom or an adequately spaced environment, please let me know. We're raring to go. We've done 1 presentation so far, but we want to do more. And this is what it's all about right here. So thank you for the time.
So much. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. So we want to thank our friends from the Arlington County Police Department. Thank you so much for your time. And we know that these are not the easiest conversations to have, but we appreciate you being here and being transparent. We also thank you. We also want to thank our friends from Callaway, UMC. Thank you so much for great questions. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Clarendon, UMC, for showing up. We are continuing in our journey to be part of the solution. So I appreciate you being here. Everybody take care.
Thank you, folks. You all stay
Thank
safe.
you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, thank you.